Black girls are more likely to have violent interactions with police than white girls. This is new information from a Marshall Project report that outlines police violence against youth from 6 different cities across the country. All right, joining us now with more on this report is BNC's Jamiese Price. She's live in New Orleans at a police department included in this exact report. Jamiese, tell us what you found out.
Yeah, Tashanea, it is alarming, especially as a Black woman and as an aunt who has several nieces. So this is something that I'm paying close attention to. The researchers with the Marshall Project found that every girl involved in a use of force incident involving New Orleans police was a Black girl. So they looked at the Marshall Project. The Marshall Project looked at police departments in Chicago, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, Portland, Columbus, Ohio, and right here in New Orleans. And they found from 2015 to 2020, 4,000 children 17 and under experienced a violent interaction with an officer. Of that 4,800 of those children were Black girls, while 120 white girls experienced violent interactions with police. Now, this is just a glimpse of police interactions with Black girls, a small window. And the problem is there's not a national database that documents these incidents. So in order to get a full picture, we will need a national database to document those interactions. But unfortunately, we don't have that yet. So this is something we will continue to follow throughout the day, talking with those advocates and hopefully hearing from the police department so we can get more information from them as well. Tashanea?
Startling to say the least. As an aunt of nieces as well, I know you will stay on top of this. It's just unbelievable. Thank you, though, for that report. All right, here's a breakdown of some more eye-popping statistics. 21,000 minors were treated for non-fatal injuries after encounters with police and security guards from 2015 to 2019. Even though Black children only account for 13% of the youth in this country, they made up 33% of the victims. And Black girls, well, they were a large part of those cases as well, and often got left behind when it comes to their care after treatment. However, this is an issue that has been echoed throughout the White House.
We know that police violence disproportionately impacts Black and Latino people in communities, and that Black women and girls, like Black men and boys, experience higher rates of police violence. So our focus is on working to address systemic racism and implicit bias head-on, and of course to passing laws and legislation that will put much-needed reforms into place at police departments around the country.
Joining us now is psychiatrist Dr. Erica Goodwin. Welcome to BNC Live. Now, we just heard from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. She mentioned police reform is needed around the country, but still, not much progress has been made yet. George Floyd police bill still stalling. What more can the Biden administration do to prevent Black and brown youth from being victims of police brutality?
The complicated thing with this issue is, unfortunately, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And it's going to take work on multiple ends. As far as the thing that strikes me really huge with these types of issues is what happens after these events? What happens? And the fact that you end up then with a young person, in this case, a young Black girl that has sustained a traumatic experience that will most likely have some consequences of this trauma that, as we know, most likely will not be treated. So it's kind of like these events happen and then it's over. And then if you kind of extrapolate from there, then this person has trauma reactive behavior, is taught that their body is not meant to be safe or respected. And then they grow up to be a woman that is anxious, that is a trauma survivor, and then sees the world through that lens. And so I really think it's, from a legislative standpoint, as far as not only looking at the ways we can change the culture of policing, but also how to change and increase supports of mental health supports around people that are experiencing these types of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are startling. The numbers are there. What you just said talks to the aftermath of what is experienced, that trauma. Can you talk more about that?
Sure, thank you so much. The after impact, a lot of times when people think of trauma, They think of what they see on movies, and a lot of even the original descriptions of PTSD came from looking at veterans and combat exposure, while actually there are a zillion different ways people are experiencing trauma. And one of the things that you'll see is you can see irritability, you can see anxiety, you can see poor concentration, you can see people have difficulty with interpersonal connections and having relationships. All of these things can happen, which get in the way of the young person being able to move forward. And then you start moving forward down the line. If you're having these difficulties, you may also have difficulties in school, start having poor academic performance, may have some acting out, which then causes more behavioral disturbances that are oftentimes over exaggerated with the consequences leading to the prison, the school to prison pipeline, and then kind of best case scenario if someone's just a dysfunctional adult.
Dr. Goodwin, this topic, you can tell how it impacts both of us because we're both just, I mean, there's so many emotions involved that I can't even get my words out. We briefly started talking about once a young child has this experience with law enforcement, they start to feel as if places that were meant to be safe, their body, their homes, are no longer sacred places. Can you talk more about that?
Sure, thank you so much. The short version is when someone feels that there is no safe space, then they're going to have these significant emotional consequences that are going to ripple throughout the community from the people that were feeling like they should keep them safe. And then it just continues to go on with their interpersonal reactions throughout really the rest of their lives. And you can totally see someone totally shift off course from where they were, even from an academic or a school viewpoint, because of something like this.
Yeah, the Associated Press just released an article about children as young as 7 being handcuffed, physically roughed up, also having guns pointed at them. So when you talk about a child that young, can you talk about the long-term trauma or PTSD that they may experience?
Sure. And the one thing I want to put in here is there are times where people have what we call trauma reactive behavior.
Mm.
It may not even have the full symptoms of PTSD, but they are significantly trauma affected. And children that young that are in those types of situations, you get back to that same situation of them not feeling like the space is safe. But also, when these things are happening, a lot of times they're in school or in their own communities, which means they're not going to be able to concentrate and focus and a lot of times connect with people and even do their schoolwork, which then has other consequences.
So is that an example of that is perhaps someone being easily startled or someone jumping at
Mhm.
just a touch, a loving touch?
Yes, it includes that. It also can include children isolating themselves. They may not learn the best language, or they may not even have the language if they're really young to even tell you how they're feeling. But it just gets so pervasive they may not sleep. You may see them getting irritable and getting into arguments at school, at home, and with friends.
Dr. Erica, have you spoken to any of these children that have experienced this? And if so, what have you heard from them in terms of how they're feeling?
It hurts. I've seen kids. I've worked with a lot of kids, especially in public systems over the years, and they're just hurt and feel like not only the system but people around them have failed, and then don't know what to do next. And nothing's sadder than a hopeless child.
How do you help them on that road to recovery? Because that's just such an awful, I can't imagine a young child feeling as if their body, their life doesn't matter. I mean, you grow up thinking that, become an adult thinking you don't matter. So you act out.
One of the best ways to help young people like that is through a team approach. So a lot of times you need people that are supporting the family and the adults around the child, people that do have some support in the school environment and support directly with the child with learning how to reestablish safe spaces, how to communicate their emotions, how to deal with the times when they just feel overloaded, like their emotions are going to boil over, so that they can start managing these emotions in a healthier way that also allows them to still continue to learn, develop, and form relationships. So a lot of times that may also include therapists and psychiatrists.
And you mentioned that team approach. I mean, you're also involving the school because that's where they spend the majority of their time during the day. Can you talk about some of the approaches you've had with schools in terms of some of your own clients? Obviously, without giving too much away client privilege information.
Or the first thing is to even be in touch with the school and find a point person that you can actually have ongoing conversations with, so that if something happens and you know what's going on, that both parties can participate together in a plan, and also to have alternative things to do when a child becomes emotionally overloaded, and also for the school to have an understanding of what's going on with the child, so that they don't misperceive the child's behavior or actions and then start being punitive over something that needs to actually be therapeutic.
Yeah, because it could become a cycle where a child is
It
acting
is.
out. Yeah, talk about that.
Well, part of what makes this worse is a lot of these reports, they start saying, and this child talked back. And a lot of times when you talk about these trauma or these fear responses, we talk about fight, flight, or freeze. Well, if someone's scared and they go into fright and flight or freeze, or they go into fight, well, if they're fighting, they may sound more verbally intense, and then that gets read as they're a threat. And then you end up with these situations with these kids getting pepper sprayed, shot, have guns in their faces. So a lot of it's having a better understanding of these different responses and being adults that govern ourselves accordingly.
Yeah, and we're also talking about children who don't truly understand the consequences of their actions. I mean, their brain is still developing, they're still understanding the world. Can you talk about that as well and how that's misperceived, as you said?
Sure. Number one, these children, a lot of times until they have a major interaction with the police, their idea of the police is what they see on video games or TV or movies, which is very different than sometimes reality is. So, the impact on the brain, number one, is that you can literally almost rewire the brain with trauma. So, when you have these trauma experiences or this intense fear, that then this child's brain starts getting rewired in what they feel like is appropriate or safe, or who to trust, or what to do in situations and how to govern themselves, just gets totally mixed up because then they're getting reprogrammed by these types of negative experiences.
Yeah. We got to go, Dr. Erica Goodwin, but if you could just tell us briefly the road to healing after a traumatic situation like this, outside of the team approach, what can we do as a community?
There are two huge things on the road to healing. One is to listen and to support people by actually asking and paying attention to what's going on. The next is to get help. So, in some cases, someone may see someone like me, but that could be a psychologist, a licensed clinical counselor, a psychiatrist, but to actually get some help and not be trying to fix trauma at home. Mental health is not a do it yourself situation.
Yeah, well said. Dr. Erica Goodwin, thank you so much for joining us.